And welcome to the Valley today. We are at the downtown Fulton Mall with Ray McKnight, and Ray is one of the champions of the Fulton Mall, trying to keep this as the Fulton Mall. And this has been a bone of contention since it was built in 1964, huh?
Well, I think it started off, everybody was very enthusiastic about it, but things happened that made people have their doubts about it. Yeah.
And you know, I really haven't looked at the artwork before, but I noticed that this statue back here at the entrance to the west entrance of the mall, it's very nice.
Yes, that's the Visit by Clem Renzi, who was a local sculptor. There are two sculptures by him on the mall. There's one of the Yokuts Indian at the other end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's about 20 different artists represented here?
Yeah, sometimes I hear 20, sometimes 19. We've got at least 19 sculptures on the mall, some by local artists and some by very famous artists from elsewhere, including The Washerwoman, which was done by Jean Renoir.
Wow. And that he was the 20th century.
Right. He was the painter that at the end of his career got interested in sculpture.
Yeah.
And there were either four, I hear different points of here, either 4 or 5 castings of that in the world, and we have one of those here.
This was revolutionary in the mid-60s, this mall. I mean, it was one of a kind back then, and really it still is.
It still is. Yeah, if you'd like to know how things got started, to get why they
I would.
Yeah. Well, what was happening was, although Fulton Street had been the main business retail area, businesses started moving north when Manchester Center was built, the first big shopping center in the north. And although a fig garden may have been around the same time. And so the downtown merchants and people in the city wanted to stop that flow of customers, of shoppers north. And that's when they got a man named Victor Gruen, very famous architect. He's called the inventor of the shopping center. And so Victor Gruen and Associates were hired to come up with a plan to revitalize downtown. And Victor Gruen then engaged Garrett Ekbo, who was a world-renowned landscape architect, to design the Fulton Mall, make it a pedestrian mall. And Gruen's plan saw the mall as a centerpiece for his other ideas for revitalizing.
But beyond shopping, this mall really was envisioned as also being a living environment.
Oh,
where people would they would live here.
Like a park, yes.
Like a park.
And those were the words that Garrett Ekbo used about it. And in fact, a famous book he wrote, which is still kind of an important manual on landscape architecture, is called Landscape for Living. He really saw it as a park as well as a shopping area.
So what happened with the living spaces?
Well, the Gruen's plan, besides some ideas about putting in the mall, was to create that triangle of the freeways, supposedly to allow people to get in here, and then create a lot of residential areas. And that just never materialized.
But now we do have the triangle of the freeways, because we have 99, 41, and 168.
That took a while to get that completed. And but the idea of making this area within that triangle a large area for residential living just didn't happen, and only recently has there been any move in that direction.
So did they really think that they could stop the exodus of people shopping?
They did think that. They did think that. And it only worked for a few years, because what happened was the city government simply turned to this policy of decentralization, allowing this leapfrog movement north, and particularly the creation of Fashion Fair, and of course more recently,
Manchester
like
Mall, Manchester Center was the first one created north, and then Fashion Fair, and now you've got River Park.
And just this northern movement of everything.
But in '64, I think the population was what, about 40, 50,000 people?
I think 60 was about 60-some thousand, I believe.
Fairly substantial.
But it's a lot bigger now, and if there's time, I'd like to say something about what Ekbo was thinking in his design of the mall, because the first thing you'll notice is the stained concrete, and what he was doing was he was trying to evoke really the land, the terrain of the Central Valley, and then there are these undulating ribbons with Mexican rock that kind of suggest different contours in that flat valley.
Right.
And then right behind us is the kind of some of the water features.
This is a shut-down water feature, but I
yeah,
can imagine
a huge
it was...
one. And this is one of the ones designed by local artist Stan Bitters. And so you'll notice that if it were running, you'd have water coming out of these different raised areas, coming in different streams, down, 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 and finally into that stream that runs down to the visit. And so you get a sense of the water's place in the valley and the streams that emanate. At the other end of the mall, as a complement to this, is another stream like that.
Right.
And the other thing here are these ceramic pipes. Garrett Ekbo saw something else that Stan Bitters had designed, and he told him he had been noticing that the standpipes used in irrigation in all the agriculture in the valley, and so Stan Bitters designed these all, water is supposed to be coming out of them, which kind of evoke standpipes that we were familiar with in
the Fertile Valley.
Yeah, the
Now
Fertile
there's
Valley.
one thing else one more thing you want to show us, and you want to show us the crane.
Yeah, I want to go to another area where the right of the crane is.
Okay, well let's go do that.
Okay.
Well, now we're at the right of the crane, and this is a Bruno Groth piece.
Yes, and one reason I wanted to come here, we're at Merced, one of the cross malls, and what Ekbo was doing here was he was evoking the fact that there's some marshlands in the valley too.
Right.
And originally, all the plantings around this were reeds, the kind of plants you would find there. That's all been allowed to die. And then, of course, we have another stream headed down that way. Well, one of the points I would like to make about this is the plan to put a street through, they're going to pay right through. This is all just going to be taken out.
Oh, so they're going to also do the cross streets of Fulton. They're going to
this effort to evoke that aspect of the valley, that'll just disappear. And then, of course, the other things that are going to happen, look right up here, these big evergreen trees. Although the people advocating putting a street through say they're going to replace trees, think what this place is going to be like when instead of these trees giving a shade, you're going to have all these saplings in their place. So most of the trees are going to be removed. Other things that will apparently going to disappear are something we haven't mentioned yet, those seating areas with mosaics that were designed by local artists, Joyce Aiken, Jean Ray Laurie, and then we can't see, we can kind of see from here some of these seating areas. Some of them are raised where people can sit in a circle. A lot of those, or most of those, are going to go. So what the advocates for putting traffic on the mall claim they're going to try to save bits of it, but bits aren't the same.
And that was my next question.
Yeah.
Was there going to be a place that they were going to move these pieces of art?
They're talking about
storage area.
Yeah, they're talking about finding places to put the art along the sides of this street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but what's going to be lost is what we now have, which enabled us to get the Fulton Mall declared eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, and that was based on the fact that the integrity of the design is still intact.
Right.
And that's all going to be gone. So even the Caltrans Culture and Resources people that wrote a report about all this point out that once that all that integrity will be lost, and the basis for what the Downtown Fresno Coalition got, which is to have this declared as a historical resource, that's all going to be erased. That'll be gone.
Right.
And so what I would say is this Fulton Mall, which was world renowned, it's mentioned and still being mentioned in books about urban planning, landscape architecture. It's the one thing that exists right now in Fresno of that sort that gets that kind of attention. There won't be basis for that anymore.
So what's the answer to jumpstart traffic coming in here?
Yeah.
Not car traffic, but foot traffic for people to come here and enjoy the mall.
I think the starting point is for the city to do something it hasn't done for a long time, and that is to maintain and start fixing up the mall, and start promoting it, because you can, when you're driving towards downtown, you can find signs that tell you that Chuck Chancellor Park is over there, but there aren't any signs that direct you to Fulton Mall.
The mall, right.
And sort of that's the beginning, but of course we have to find ways to attract people. But I think one of the things that I believe is that they'll never get this, even if they turn it into a street, they'll never get this to be the retail center for a huge area of the valley.
Right.
Because there's Fashion Fair, there's River Park, and
certainly all those places are easier to access.
Well, right. Another thing is a lot of the advocates on the other side talk about creating more parking. Well, there will be more parking on some along that street, but there will be parking meters, and apparently Fresno people don't like to pay for parking when they shop.
When you have a downtown where you're paying for parking and then the rest of Fresno has free parking, it's that's a bone of contention. It really is.
So anyway, I think later, I think you're going to be talking to my daughter. I think she's going to want to tell you about an alternative plan we're advocating for bringing traffic a little closer, which is to use the two alleys that are parallel to Fulton.
We're almost out of time, but one of the interesting things about some of this artwork is it's interactive. Kids can probably get in the ponds and they can splash around. They can, on a hot summer day, they can,
Yes, and as I was telling you earlier, kids like to get up and sit on the lap of the two ladies in the visit down that way. And what's amazing, to talk about the washerwoman, the Renoir thing, people can actually, not that you always have to encourage them to, but people can actually go up and touch that. The other castings of that work of his are behind, well, they're guarded in museums in other parts of the world.
Do you think there'll be a feeding frenzy if the washerwoman comes up for bid? Do you think think art collectors will start?
Well, the merchants, the business people who raise the money. O.J. Woodward, a very well-known name here. O.J. Woodward headed the committee to collect money to buy the art, and I think the figure is that they spent about $200,000. Their estimate now, this art is worth millions, but I don't want us to sell it.
No, of course not.
But I want us to promote it.
Now with the fabulous Kate McKnight, Ray's daughter, and we are at Tulare and Fulton, and still talking about the Fulton Mall and wanting to preserve this iconic artwork here.
Yes, it is a major artwork, the whole mall itself. And I know my father's filled you in on kind of how the mall came to be and why we should continue preserving it. And then we do have a plan for the future I'd like to talk about. But just a reminder that the mall is used currently by many people. Thousands of people come to the mall every year for Fiestas Patrias. Every year an ice rink is held and they close up the mall by the clock tower. And that brought people from all parts of town that have never been to the mall before. And that during that time, I think my father mentioned promotion. Billboards talked about the ice rink and safe parking, maybe relaxed parking. So why not do that as a year-round prospect? And it shows you that people will come if there's a destination. People will come if there's a special event. The idea the mall could be a cultural center. It is in some ways. And also the mall should be also preserved as a place where nearby locals shop. And the idea is not to push out anybody, but to bring others in.
I can imagine, well, there are vacancies here too.
Yes.
But the culture in the mid-60s is different than it is now.
That's true.
On this
The
piece
demographics
of real estate.
have changed.
The demographics have changed.
Demographics have changed. We have an economic downturn that the mall did not cause that. And so unfortunately people want to blame the mall and also the empty buildings, but don't forget that's part of the north spread. That's part of the planning errors probably that our city has made that caused that.
And that's interesting that you brought that up, because there is some people want to blame the Fulton Mall for certain malfeasance, but what is that?
No. Well, I mean, I guess it's nice to have a scapegoat or a place that's a scapegoat. But it's a fallacy. People do use the mall every day. And as I mentioned, it's clear we can bring people here with the right promotion and ways to show them that you can park. You have to park at Fashion Fair or River Park. But there's also, we're hoping on the Downtown Fresno Coalition to say, all right, we'll work with you all.
Yeah.
So there's an idea that maybe these alleys that run to the east and west, Federal Alley and Congo Alley to the west, that they could be more thoroughfares for traffic with spots for parking, and particularly maybe some handicap parking would be a great thing to have. And then there's some facades covering some single story, not really great architecture on some of the mall. Beautiful here, Bank of Italy, not so pretty over here. Maybe get one of those buildings removed, cause an arcade, and those pathways where you can see little shops inside. You'd park in an alley, walk through, and boom, you'd be out in this beautiful mall.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't have to walk all around the outside in Tulare here.
Right.
And that's a way to say, look, we will compromise, but don't rip this up. Don't tear out this beautiful sculpture up here. Don't tear out my bench that I like to sit on with mosaic.
Yeah.
Yes, there are building owners that are unhappy that their buildings are empty. Part of these problem of our buildings on the mall is that a lot of work would have to be done to them. It's not easy to start a business and a building on the mall.
Well, really, they need to get people living here too.
That would change everything.
That would change everything.
When people live somewhere, then they demand a grocery store, a dry
Coffee
cleaner,
shop.
a hair salon.
Right.
And, so when people live and work in a place, then you don't worry as much about driving your car because you're already there.
Right.
And that was the original part of the city planning that was never completed. The vision was not completed.
Why didn't they take it to that level? Why weren't there people moving in here? Because we see
Can I
these
say
buildings
one
here.
word? Money.
Yeah.
North, what the promise of the north.
Right.
And when you bring people up north and say this is the newest thing, why would you want to live and work in a place where the bright, shiny lights
Sure.
of fashion fair, and also even St. Agnes moving was caused a problem. Now Valley Children's is outside.
Valley Children's used to be on Shields, now they're in Madera County.
So you take the city center, hospitals, services, and you put them north, then you no longer can this be the heart of the city.
Right.
And all of us think of it as the heart of the city, but a street, Fulton Street, in its heyday in the 30s and the 40s, maybe toward the 50s, but clearly there were problems then. That's why the mall was put in. People were not staying here.
Yeah.
Revitalization, the term has come around now, 50 years it has come around
Right.
again. And to revitalize doesn't mean to us in the Downtown Coalition, lovers of the mall, to rip up. It means to restore,
Right.
protect, restore. And certainly we acknowledge that. I don't want to see empty buildings here either.
Right.
But this is more complicated than the fact that people can't drive down here. I mean, I think it's a much more complicated issue looking back to our city planning. A lot of the business owners live in Los Angeles. Maybe they don't have quite the same feeling for the mall, but I grew up here. I was taken to shop on the mall. I come here to...
Yeah, fond memories as
I
a
have
child.
fond memories, and I continue to come here. I even go to a shoe repair guy here.
Oh,
I
good.
could go to one in my hood, but I come here
Right.
to give business on the mall.
Yeah.
And I come to events I was
So
telling
if
you about.
an apartment were able
I'd
to
look
open up here,
a lot.
would you?
There are a few, but
Yeah.
and sadly they've been kind of pricey in
Right.
the Pacific
Right.
Southwest building.
As a matter of fact, I was
You
up
know.
there about a month and a half
Beautiful,
ago,
aren't they?
and I saw one of the apartments.
They're a little bit above some of our price range, but
Right.
if more were open, you'd get more competitive pricing.
Something, like studio apartments
Yes.
that were affordable.
But
I
that would be
think
more
people yeah.
my style.
But now the youngest generation is really looking at living, in a
Oh, that's right.
in
An
this
urban
type
center.
in this
Yeah.
type of environment.
They want urban living. They want urban living, and if you have urban living, you do need a place to go that's green or
Yeah.
has greenery.
Right.
If all these old trees are removed, as my dad said, that would take away the urban park aspect of
Right.
the Pacific downtown area. Did I say Pacific? That's the Fresno Pacific. I'm looking at the Pacific Garden Mall in Santa Cruz, which took out its pedestrian, and they also found that less foot traffic happened for there. In
Right.
Chicago, they're trying things called parklets. Just read an article where they've actually taken out roads near their business, and people will sit and congregate and like, oh, I'm going to go buy a soda or coffee in
Sure.
that shop.
Right.
So other cities are trying to put back in pedestrian areas. Our other friends, I call them on the other side, would say no, more pedestrian malls are being paved over, but they're not the same as this mall.
No, this one is unique.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is a totally different place. And it's one of the things that Fresno could put a pin on and say, we have this unique place. Forestier Gardens,
Yeah.
the Fulton Mall, certain parts of downtown, the Armenian Center. So I don't know, we're one of the few cities that seems to take out its roots and its history and
Well, I
want
think
to
as
remove
newer
that.
generations come in, though, they have a different idea of what
True.
to do than holding on to the past. You know?
I know. Well,
Unfortunately.
I think that's true. I mean, but how do you make the past relevant to people?
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing about this that looks old-fashioned.
No,
I mean,
it's very nice.
It's something that could all people, once they come down for an event, they say this is such a beautiful thing.
Right.
Every summer, an event called Catacomb Party. It's a free music
Mm-hmm.
event. Multiple stages are held. It's interesting because all the 20-some hipsters, but they come. And sometimes they don't feel like, well, yeah, put a road through there. But then when you start talking about them, showing them this, if the city promoted it, it'd be really hard to justify the change. And again, I think if we were asked to come to the table with our plans, people would see that we're not just stuck in the mud,
well,
stuck in the past.
actually, have you presented your plan for the alleyways to be developed as thoroughfares?
We're not given that. We were not given that opportunity.
Okay.
There was three options presented supposedly to the council at the time of the vote. This alleyway idea, I think it kind of came a little after, but the idea we were saying, well, why don't we develop an option 3, which would be how do you bring in some traffic, improve the entrances of either side of the mall. The signage is terrible. Maybe a partial. I'm open to the idea of maybe a partial drive-in where someone could drop people off.
Well, we were talking
without
yesterday
uprooting the
before
art.
we started taping that Lombard Street up in
yes.
San Francisco.
The twistiest road in
and
the world, maybe.
It
Yeah.
has that.
Yeah.
It has that charm because
Yeah.
it still allows people to drive. It's only one way,
Right.
and you have to go slow. But I think that they could maybe pull that off here.
If you
Keep all the art in place.
If you could do it without taking out all the trees, and
Right.
you'd have to move all the artwork. It's already been, some of the work has been done. They admit from the city that we would have to take the art. Well, where are you going to put it? I guess it could all be jumbled into one area, but again, that does not the purpose. The
Right.
artists themselves have already, who are still living, have gone on record as, you can't just move my art. This is what I knew my art was going to go in that
Right,
location.
yeah.
For instance, Dan Bitter's art, it was all part of the integrated design. So there would be more lawsuits potentially. I don't think the city is really facing the fact that this is something beyond just maybe we're going to have a panacea of a road go through. You would be changing what people's intent was.
Yeah.
The kind of grounding city civic leaders who raised money, Woodward was part, as my father mentioned, they all saw this vision as something that was going to help Fresno. So now, how do we improve it? Not keep it just as it is, we're looking for improvements, but not change something that is part of our past, but could be a great thing to bring people to Fresno.
Right.
I just feel like it would be a terrible shame to look at this as a solution when it's a bigger issue. There are bigger issues in Fresno. We have surrounding streets that have access with empty buildings.
Right.
So I don't understand how this
Actually,
would be the
coming
solution.
down here, we didn't really have an issue with parking. You know,
No,
parking. We were here
yeah.
yesterday, and of
That's
course we
right.
parked here today, and we didn't really have an issue.
No,
with
my
parking.
father and I got out of a parking spot and walked just a few yards to where
Yeah,
I met you.
right.
And I think it's just there's been a lot of urban legends created,
Sure.
and a lot of misinformation.
Yeah.
And it's time really for all of us to maybe try to sit at the table again, see if there's a way that the Tiger Grant and monies could revisioned, and maybe there's some concessions perhaps on the either end with some entrance or exits. I'm open,
Okay.
but I really don't want to lose the special quality.
Now you have a nonprofit
Yes.
organization.
Downtown
And-
Fresno Coalition is part of the Thousand Friends Fresno.
Okay.
We're kind of, that's our umbrella organization.
Sure.
thousandfriendsfresno.org.
Okay.
And
thousandfriendsfresno.org.
They can
Okay.
reach us there. And I have a Facebook page, Downtown Fresno Coalition on Facebook. They can go to that to learn about our meetings that are held at the Fresno Arts Council office on Van Ness.
Okay.
And through that, they can email with us, leave us their email information. Any comments, any interest, and we're also always looking to continue to raise money to protect them all, and they can find the information on the website.
Great.
You know,
All
so
right. Well,
thank you.
we're out of time. Do you see how fast 12 minutes goes?
It went too fast.
It went too fast.
Let's
Kate
walk them
McKnight.
all again, all
Let's
right?
walk them all again sometime
Thank you,
soon
Bob.
with Kate McKnight. And thanks to Ray for helping us on this episode. The Fulton Mall. Come down and see it. The artwork is very interesting. There's some famous pieces here.
Yes.
The Valley Today is a public service presentation of this great TV station. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Thank you.